All right, welcome to the Eric Tries Too Hard podcast, episode 100, and I've done 3 of these today, something. So I am here with Baltimore stand-up comedian Michael Furr. How are you doing today, Michael?
Hey, I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, very well. Glad to be talking to you. I've seen you now do stand-up a handful of times. You're extremely funny, and I'm really, really happy to have you.
Awesome. It's really good to be here. I'm excited.
So just to start off, what were you doing tonight? You were doing like a writer's group or working on something?
Yeah, I'm the head writer for a talk show that we've been doing, just started recently out of the Charm City Comedy Project called Hamden Tonight. And we have like our pitch meeting on Sunday nights. And so we were just going over that. And luckily we've been doing it. I think this will be our 7th episode. So we've got it kind of down to a science now. So we all just sort of like, we're all here. We all know what we're doing. Okay, see you Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, nice, nice. So do you... So how does it work? Is this audio, video, just live? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, so we do we film it and we put it on YouTube, but we also do it a live broadcast on Periscope. And you miss some of the content because we edit in like commercials and things later, like funny commercials that we make. But we usually have a bit of a live studio audience. We usually have a couple of friends of the guests or whatever, so it is a live experience too. And we compile jokes. Monologue jokes all week, just about different like articles and crazy things we've seen in the news. And then I put them together and I sort of make them into a cohesive monologue and we give them to the host and let them put the spin on it. It's a different host every week. So, we've had like Ian Salyers and, a couple different people who have their own voice and want to put their spin on things. And so I oversee all that and finalize all that. And it's actually been going really well the past 2 episodes. I actually got to host last week too. I was a fill-in, but it was really fun. It's been going good. Hamden Tonight.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, at the end, I'll give you another chance to plug anything extra to phone. That's really cool. I'm excited to check that out.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So, do you primarily do writing or stand-up? Like, what's your main avenue, your main passion, I should say, for breaking into this comedy world?
Like I've been a writer forever. Like I've always written, and I used to write books, and I used to write funny comic books, and like I always wrote. And I wanted to do stand-up, but I was just really scared to, and I was just like nervous to actually get up on stage in front of people and not like, I don't know why, but like in my head, like my worst case scenario was I was going to get up there and someone was going to throw a full beer bottle at me. Like if anything that could happen to you, I was like, that's all I could see was like a full beer bottle like ricocheting off of my head. And me going unconscious. Like it's not like I was afraid. It was like specifically that. So when I finally got over that, I started doing stand up and I do improv too. So it's like, they're all to me like different sides of the same, I guess, person's career. But I don't know. I mean, I always want to do stand up, but I guess I do consider myself to be a writer first and foremost.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I definitely relate to that. I was, how long have you been doing stand-up?
Actually, just over a year.
Okay, cool. Oh, congratulations on your year. I imagine you're very good at ducking now, as that you got over your fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so like I always did music. And so a couple of years ago, I was just like, I've loved comedy my whole life, and I'm about to have a kid, so why don't I figure out ways to do something? I can't tour, like I can't just do that, and so anymore. And so I started doing a podcast, and I loved it so much. I started doing like comedy writing and helping my comedian friends punch up their scripts. And about a month ago, I just started going up, and it's terrifying and so much fun. But I definitely relate to that whole thing of the idea of writer first. I definitely relate to that. All right, that's cool. So what was the thing, not just getting you into performing, but as far as comedy is concerned, what, if you can recall the furthest back memory where you had of comedy in general, where it felt to you like it was more than just like, something entertaining, that thing that drove you to kind of really have that true love for comedy?
Yeah, I definitely, I was always the one, like the kid, I have 3 brothers. We grew up in Columbia, Maryland. So it was like tons of kids everywhere. And, it was like the early mid 80s. So it was all these kids everywhere, but I always wanted to impress the adults. I always wanted to make everybody else's parents laugh, because even as a kid, I was such a little shithead that I knew but these are kids. Like, I don't care what their opinions are. They're children. I want to make the adults laugh. And I remember being a kid, and all the moms and dads were sitting around in the like lawn chairs, smoking cigarettes and drinking cans of beer. And it was somebody's birthday, and they were like, "Hey, why don't you kids take these kazoos and go on a little parade down the street?" So all the kids right. So all the kids are like kazooing down the street, you know, not looking both ways, just barefoot, and this broken glass probably everywhere, and just walking around. And I remember staying behind and kind of like crossing my arms and looking the lady in the eye. I was like, "I'm on to you, lady. You just want to get rid of us. I wasn't born yesterday." And they all thought it was so funny because I was such a little, being such a little shithead, that I just remember that being like 5 or 6 years old, and like, man, these parents, like, they thought I was funny, and like they appreciated it, and like it was like a big deal to me.
Yeah. So where did it go from there? When was your kind of moment, because you said you've been writing forever, what got you to start writing?
Like, I always, you know, I was like, since I had all these brothers, like, we were always watching cartoons and playing video games, and we had a million toys and everything, but like none of it was ever exactly what I wanted it to be. I always thought like my ideas were better. So even from like a little kid on, I was always like making things, creating things. And then as soon as I got into like middle school, I knew that I could do creative writing, and I knew that that was a good outlet for me, and I could do basically the same thing, and I could create all of this fictional worlds and everything. And it always had a comedy slant. Like, I actually wrote a short series of books that I'm probably in the process of self-publishing. It's only taken me 8 years, whatever, I'll get around to it. But it, like, even though it started out to be this like great work of fiction, it ended up being a comedy because that's just always my voice. And, you know, I've been writing jokes for myself to tell as a stand-up for years before I ever thought I would be brave enough to actually get up on stage and help.
By the way, I've talked to, at this point, probably 50, 60 comics on this podcast, and that is almost universally what everybody says. It was just that there was something that stopped them for their first time, but they had all these jokes. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So did you do any performance before you did stand-up comedy?
Yeah, I was when I was younger, I was an actor, and I did all the school plays and everything, and drama, everything. And I always did I did a lot of crew stuff too. I was always like a stage lighter and you know, sound person and running stuff behind the scenes. But I always wanted to like be on stage, but because I had like a gay voice, and I was like kind of an effeminate voice, I was scared to like talk in front of people like a lot when I got older, like especially like high school and everything. I was scared to like stand up there because I knew everyone would hear my voice and they could tell that I was gay. So I kind of like took more of a backstage kind of role. But in my head, I always had it that like, oh, I kind of want to be the one on stage.
I could have crushed that.
Yeah, I could have crushed that. Because I remember I would always try out, and like they would, you know, I would do really well, but I would like take the understudy of the lead because I didn't really want to be on stage, but I still wanted to like practice and learn everything and have everybody hear that I could actually sing it and actually do the part. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. This is a very weirdly specific question. And it only comes out of my own experience. Do you feel more comfortable? Okay, so let's say your typical, you know, stand-up advice is you want the people in front of you to do really well because then the crowd's hot and you can step right in there and like you already have that momentum. Yeah. Do you prefer that, or do you prefer when people in front of you are bombing, so the bar is kind of set lower, and so if you do well, it means more, but if you don't do as well, you can go, whatever. They were, you know, the crowd was ruined from the people in front of me.
That's a really good question, because I've been in both of those situations, and either way, if the situation is, but I did okay, it's like, yeah. I really don't care. But no, you know what? It's funny because like I've done so many open mics where it's a tepid crowd, or it's a small crowd, or it's a crowd of people who aren't actively listening, and it feels like everybody's bombing, and I can see people who I see do good stand-up struggle. And I think in those moments, I try to get as conversational and personal, at least with the people in the audience who I either know or I feel like I can connect with. And I feel like sometimes I'll do well at a situation where everyone's bombing, but I'm not really doing my like material and doing like what I would do if I was on a show or even at an open mic, because I'm like, people's jokes aren't really working. So unless I'm here to work on timing and actually work out a bit, maybe I should just talk to people and just, work on being on stage.
That's a great strategy. Is that like, I assume that's something you kind of picked up as you went, just figuring out how to audible like that?
Well,
how often you? No, go for it. Go for it.
Well, I was gonna say, like, actually, when I started doing stand-up, my friend John Stonebreaker, he was bartending at this place, Jay's on Reed in Mount Vernon, and he, they had a karaoke night, and he was like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna turn it into a stand-up night too," and so it was kind of like a half open mic, half karaoke night at this bar where no one thought it was anything but karaoke. And he and I would basically just sit there and shoot the shit and talk to the audience and do this very like off the cuff kind of loungy comedy act, like this kind of boozy, like, hey, where are you from? Let's sit down and let's talk about it. And that was really like kind of how I started getting comfortable with and getting like a stage presence. And it had so little to do with the material that I was writing that it was just like working on confidence, working on blocking, the beer bottles was the important part.
Yep. Well, sorry, I keep going back to that because I imagine in like a Mighty Ducks training montage, like where they have the goalie who's scared of the puck and they just tape him there and hit him with pucks. I feel like that's you and like all your comic friends, and you're just like, no, I can't. Yeah. That makes sense. The reason I asked you that very specific question, I personally, this is a whole like, there's a whole thing in like articles and it's like Psych Field about this, where there are some people who like a neutral setting, some people who like a layup type setting, and some people who like to have the most challenging setting. So if they fail, it's not all on them. And I definitely fit into that category, which is why when you said I want to be the understudy, I totally relate to that, where I'm like, I get it. I want to have the chance. I want to be able to go out there and have the opportunity to just kill it. But I also want people to go lower their expectations and go, well, it's the understudy. So what else? But we don't have the main person. So this will do. So how often do you go up? About?
I usually do two or three performances a week, whether it's 2 open mics in the show or 2 shows and an open mic. I definitely rarely take a week off. If I don't do Sidebar, I do one of the nights at Zizimo's, so I at least get like one night on stage. And between other bookings, I'm usually on stage twice a week. Like I was at Coco Lane last week. I'll be at the New Deal in Greenbelt this week, and then I have 2 shows at Zizimo's this week. My monthly showcase, Rain Bros, is this Thursday, and then Saturday I'm doing the 1-year anniversary of Brutal Comedy. So
nice.
I try to be on stage a lot, and it's nice to have like one open mic to work on some stuff and work on the set, and then have 2 other shows where hopefully I feel like I've already worked out.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I feel it's so funny because now the comedians I've been interviewing these past couple weeks since I've been doing it, my questions, I start to realize they're more pointed towards things I just want to know. I'm just like,
sure.
but now I am curious because it's like, it's so like I come in from a writer's perspective too. I've been doing writing far more than stand up. So to me, it's like the advice I keep hearing is you just keep performing to get your confidence up and to get your stage presence up. Like that's what it is. And so when you say things like you worked out just from like kind of shooting the shit with the crowd, you worked out your stage presence there your success didn't have to do anything to do with prepared material. It's just really, I guess what I'm saying is it's fascinating how your experience is paralleling so many other people's experience that I've heard. And I think that's, anytime something in an art form can be consistent, I think that's mind blowing. Like when the skill can be made to art. So did you grow up in Colombia?
Yeah, I grew up in Colombia. I lived there until I was like 12 years old. And then my parents wanted to get a big old house in the country, so they moved to Carroll County, Maryland.
What
And,
high school did you go to?
I went to South Carroll High School, which was
Did people drive tractors to school?
yeah, there was, I don't know about to school, there was a lot of tractor usage. I remember very vividly a kid having to leave school because his parents couldn't afford shoes. They needed everybody's shoes. And I remember a kid who had to go to the cosmetology suite to have his back shaved for wrestling. And yeah, it was definitely a lot of people. There was maybe some inbreeding. It was really weird because when I moved there, Columbia is so homogenous. It's a planned community. And everybody's kind of like a weird base level. And maybe some people have more money or less money, but it was pretty much everyone was on the same playing field. And when I moved to Carroll County, it was like there were people who lived in mansions and people who lived in trailer parks and then everything in between, and they all went to school together. And that was really weird to me to think like, wow, there's people who are like aggressively poor, and then there's people who are incredibly well off, like way richer than any kid I've ever actually known in my life. And those are the kind of people who move out into the country. And it was really weird. And also like I had never been experienced to like drugs before. And there was so much drugs in Carroll County. There was so much like heroin and people made meth. Like what the heck? It's Maryland. Like what the hell? Like it was a lot. It was just such a shift. And they were not ready for me. They could not handle all of this. They were not prepared. I walked into my first day of my freshman year of high school at South Carroll High School with long, straight hair that flipped out at the end to here, wearing a Metallica t-shirt and eating an apple, and it was like the record scratched. And I remember they all
the hell is that?
Like, what the fuck? And I same for me. I'm like, are you all wearing Wrangler jeans? Like, is that a bolo tie? Is this a real school? Is this a set? Am I on a set?
You are. You know what? You probably were. I grew up in Ellicott City, and everybody I knew was just like straight up into punk rock and literally nothing else. And I had a couple friends who went to, I forget which school it was, but it was Carroll County School District, and they were miserable. It was just the worst experience. And the fact, by the way, I like the fact you threw an apple there. Like, what the hell? What is that?
Yeah, they were not. They weren't ready for all this jelly, and it's okay though because I guess I got the last laugh because Howard County stacks their credits differently. So by the time I got to my junior year, I had enough credits to graduate. Because I was like, yeah, you're dumb rednecks. You wait until the last second to take all this English and math. And in Howard County, I've been taking languages since 5th grade. So bye. So I got to leave early, and
Nice. Did you go right to college? What did you do after that?
Yeah, I went to a 2-year college and then got my associate's degree, my gen ed degree. And then I started at a 4-year college, and then I dropped out to be a drug addict.
So what do you do for a living?
Oh, I manage a shop. I'm a buyer and a merchandiser for a boutique in Howard County that's like an eco-friendly, all responsible company, clothing, gift, housing store. And it's pretty cool. And I've been there for a few years now, and it's cool because I'm the boss, and it's fun work.
Yeah.
You spend other people's money and travel around. It's fun. So
it sounds pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's not too bad as far as retail goes. It's definitely not bad.
Yeah, that's by the way, that is the Rolls Royce of retail jobs. If you can even call that a real retail job, that's nice.
I know it's like it's like independently owned. It's I literally only have one person over me. It's just like owner, me, 3 people. That's everyone. Like there's no middle management. Middle of what? Like there's nothing. So yeah, it's pretty sweet.
That's great. So. All right, well, so it's so interesting to hear, because based on when you said you went to high school, I can guess your age which puts you at about probably 4 or 5 years older than me, and that makes me really happy to see, because everyone seems to be like 20 years old. Like, am I wrong here? Everyone feels so young.
Everybody feels so young, and it's really weird too because I'm glad I wasn't doing stand-up at that age, not only because I was a heroin addicted mess, but because like I had also so many annoying convictions, and I'm not talking with anyone in specific if they have annoying convictions, but I think just the convictions of any 20-year-old are annoying.
Yeah.
And
if I Oh,
Oh,
just if I
you're,
saw myself, it was so bad.
yeah. I was so
Like,
sure I was right, and I was so foolish and so young. And and I think most young comedians are not like that. But at the same time, I do feel like a dinosaur sometimes because I'm like, oh, I've already lived through all this. You have another decade of this before you even
mhm.
get to the point in your life where you know who you are. You know,
Yeah, no,
so
that absolutely, absolutely. That's oh man, that's so. Uh, well, so let me. So there's a lot to unpack there, by the way.
yeah.
3 sentences. Um, are you comfortable talking about addiction? Do you want to just
Oh my
blow by
god, yeah.
that?
No,
Like,
no, please. I've been sober off of hardcore drugs for 15 years.
so do you in the because I never want to put anybody on the spot, but I think it's a fascinating and important topic.
Yeah.
I guess answer any of this however comfortable you see fit. What led to because you mentioned before in high school you were just like you'd never seen drugs. Like how did you fall into that? All by the way, all of my friends in high school wound up on that train
High on
from
cocaine.
yeah. So like yeah, well that's usually where it the tipping point. But a lot of like once needles got involved, a lot of people's lives fell apart, and so it's just like how did you wind up into anything that you were involved in, and how did you wind up getting yourself out?
Like so like the friends that I fell in with when I finally started like when I first moved to Carroll County, I fell in with like total geeks and I'm such a geek and it was all these like Dungeons and Dragons and kind of nerds or whatever. But then there were these other nerds who were like these like freak art school kind of kids and they
Yep.
were just at the age where they were going to start venturing out into the city on their own and they were going to start going to parties and it was the mid 90s. It was like 94 95. The rave scene in Baltimore was bumping and they all started sneaking out and going to the raves and stuff and I saw that and I was like I want to be with these guys,
Yeah,
this is what I want to do.
these are pretty sweet.
These guys are pretty awesome. Their pants are humongous, and I want I want
They
I
are.
want pants like that. And so I started hanging out with those kids, and it was like and I just wanted to do it. I saw people experimenting with hallucinogens and ecstasy and lots of acid, and I just was like that looks awesome, and I want to do it. And it it was a long time and a lot happened in between that and any kind of serious drug use, but it actually was a very short amount of time. It's in just a couple of years, you do a little bit of cocaine and then it's a little bit of, meth. And then someone, you find out is on heroin and you think it's gross until you see them on it. And then you're like, well, that seems pretty
That's
great.
not.
That actually seems good. I want to do that.
I had tooth surgery and I got some of those pills. If that's it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I dated a guy who ended up he had a habit and it was like I was so against it. I was like, wow, how could you let yourself get a drug habit? Heroin is the devil, and good lord. And then literally I just had to be around him enough while he was on it. And I was just like, well, just give me some of that heroin
Well, yeah.
already.
Just I mean, come on. Why are you being
Yeah.
selfish here?
Come on, it's the 90s. It was like everything was like a movie scene where they're like, come on, it's the 90s. And
Is that okay? I've seen that. I was too young in the '90s for anyone to have actually used that expression. So, but I definitely saw it on TV. Was that actually a popular thing where it was like it's the '90s?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think at the time, well, here's the thing that I always tell people. I'm like, in the 90s, here's the thing. We actually thought the future was going to be good. Like, we really thought, like, we were going to, like, move over some precipice of societal woes and, like, ignorant thinking. And it was sort of like our job to be this generation's minstrels or artists, or we were just like, let's just be a drugged up mess and let's live on people's couches and be gypsies and write poetry and write funny books and comic books and go to parties and look fabulous. And then it was like yada 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 a few years and you're like, I think I got addicted to heroin doing that. I think it seems like I do drugs every day all of a sudden. So yeah, you don't realize it's a habit until it's already happened. And so yeah, so then it just I just had to stop, and I overdosed in 2001, and
Oh,
that's a
wow.
pretty good reason to make you stop.
Yeah. So it was that incident led to like the wake up call kind of deal, or?
Yeah, that was the last time I ever used an intravenous
Oh,
drug, and then
wow.
over the course of the next like 6 months or something, I got myself completely clean, and I didn't go to AA, I didn't go to NA, I didn't check myself in anywhere. I just literally cut out everyone in my life who I did drugs with and who I knew through drugs, and then I just really focused on my life and my work, and I was learning a trade at the time and working with my hands, and it was very therapeutic, and I just got through it. And yeah, and then a few months later, I tapered off, and I just smoke pot like a regular American normal
Like a
person,
regular, yeah, there you go.
just like a regular adult.
That's well. Thank you for sharing all that with me. I know
Yeah.
that's like. It sounds like at this point you've talked about it enough that you're you're very comfortable with the past. But I still appreciate that, because that's really tough that you had to go through that. And it sounds like you did on your first shot. You did all the right things to kind of steer yourself out of that, especially with
Yeah,
cutting people out.
I feel weird like ever like accepting any kind of like praise or like congratulatory anything about it, because I'm like, I don't think we should necessarily praise people for stopping doing something that you're stupid to start doing in the first place. Like it's that's how I feel. And also too, I honestly I feel very far removed from that. Like 15 years is a long time, and I feel very removed from the person that I was at that time. And it's easy to talk about because I don't feel like, oh geez, that was a weird thing that happened to me. I'm like, well, that kid that I used to be, he was a pretty fucked up mess, but at the same time, the adult that I am now, remembers him fondly, but wants something to do.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. Oh, man. Well, so that's again just still very impressive. Like regardless of the cause of it, that still is. I mean, I've worked with a lot of addiction stuff, and it can be, it's no, stop, come on, keep, yeah, no, stop. All right, so I imagine, yeah. So you, like you said, you focused on your work and you continued on. Man, well, that's so I definitely. One of the things in there that I thought was really, really interesting was just I love firsthand accounts of kind of a cultural feeling, because it feels like too often we get like, you look at times like people go like, oh, the hippies in the 60s, peace and love. And you're like, well, actually, it wasn't exactly the 60s. It was the very tail end of the 60s, mostly the early half of the 70s. And peace and love wasn't together. It was a peace movement and a love movement, and in time, blah, blah, blah. So you get all this stuff that just gets chucked into a big blender. And like when most people think of the 90s, I imagine they think of yard sales and like Bill Clinton and Barney. Like that's what and gangster rap. Like that's the 90s. But so just to hear, like you said, like the kind of the artsy rave scene where like it feels like this is the next revolution. We are a part of this. The things we're doing now are so just important in this. And fast forward, 5-6 years later from that exact time for you, I'm in the Baltimore punk scene. It is squat houses as far as the eye can see. This is like the dawn of gentrification, where like, it's like me and my friends used to joke about this when we used to go to these same like venues like Auto Bar and Sidebar back in high school. We would have people threatening us because our pants were too tight, and now we have hipsters making fun of us because our pants are too loose. And it's like it's the weirdest thing, and that's exactly what. But what we thought, we're sitting there just like, oh, we're the next revolution. We're gonna institute this autonomous anarchist blah 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 blah, but really we're just listening to music and like getting hammered, and it just was I don't know, it was but when I think back, no, go for it.
I was gonna say it's weird because like when I started going to raves, like I really was there still going to raves at the real tail end gentrification sort of part of rave culture. It became very mainstream in like the early 2000s.
Yeah, really good.
And I remember literally one of the last parties I ever went to, it was an anime themed party that was thrown every year at Nation, Capitol Ballroom. It's Nation now. And we used to go every year, and we'd always get dressed up. And I got dressed up, and I remember I went there and there was nobody there dressed up. and everybody's there talking on their cell phone or just sitting around looking over it. And this girl turns around to me and she goes, "Oh, are you dressed like that?" And I was like, "It's over. It's done. Like, that's it. It's done. I paid $45 for these tickets. It's over." So, yeah, it was like, it just stopped being fun because it was like, wow, man, I guess everybody my age grew up or
That
died.
goddamn Sandstorm song came out, and everybody's into it.
Yeah, once you go to a party and it's on blue dee da dee dee da dee da dee da, like that's not a rave. No.
Oh my god, man. That's God. I need to start like just trying to talk to more people who were 16 to 24 in the 90s, and like okay, what was it like? I think we're far enough into the future where we can find that out, because I definitely I've played music forever, and these past 4 or 5 years I've been in a reasonably successful pop punk band. So like everybody I come in contact with is between the ages of 16 and 22. And so I feel like I have a decent pulse on the weirdness that is this generation right now. But like there are so many, eras that I feel just go misrepresented, even if they're not particularly quote unquote important or this or that. I feel like, I don't know, culture fascinates me, and little pockets of alternative culture fascinates me.
And as much as I would love to try to pretend like I could blend in and just be like, oh, just all of us young kids hanging out at the comedy club, like I do realize that I'm in fact 36 years old, and that most of the kids there are literally the age. I'm like, if your mom was a slutty raver, I might be your dad. Like that's how old you are. And I think it's funny too, because like I certainly know that the 90s was a different generation. The Generation X is definitely different than the sort of millennial generation. So it's funny. I'm always repping the 90s pretty hard. I'm like, never gonna take out this labrae piercing. Still have a wallet. Still have a wallet chain.
Okay, so I would never do this joke anywhere. I just think it's a reasonable, just for me, observation from doing these open mics is that I always thought open mics would be like playing shows in a band. It's not. It's like when I used to go to Magic tournaments and play that card game. And one of the things in my head, because it's the real reason it's like that is because it's a bunch of individuals who are technically, in a sense, competing with each other in the idea of there are only so many people who can be successful at this and get the opening spots on other shows or bigger shows or whatever. But we're not all in direct competition, so we're all cooperative, and it's this weird push and pull, but everyone's just going for themselves, but it's also community. That's why. But also chain wallets. There were so many chain wallets at open mics. And the fact that you said that, I was like, oh yeah. But I think, God, I hate myself for admitting this, but that 90s fashion that in the early 2000s, once I got to like high school, I tried to emulate. You should have seen how big my pants were when it was no longer acceptable for them to be that big. And like, I love like the Pierce. Oh my God! Like you're the same age as my old roommate, and he actually dresses a lot like you're more dapper than him. But I was just like, you guys have such good fashion. I hope it's that. And even just like with the hat and the piercing, I think that's a quintessential, really cool 90s shit.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, Lord knows I don't have the 90s hair anymore. So it's like I had to invest in hats because there was no going back. No actually going back to the 90s. If I did, I'd go and get my hair. That's what I'd get from the 90s. Yeah.
By the way, with your hat on, you could pass as a really, really young guy. Like you absolutely have that.
Yeah, my favorite things that people tell me are, you'd look really young if you weren't so bald. And also, I also love to hear, at least your head's not that weird of a shape.
Oh, there you go.
I'm like, thanks, Mom.
Oh, that's so nice of you. Do your parents support your aspirations for comedy?
Yeah, actually, my father passed away very suddenly in 2013. That's okay. Yeah. But that's actually what really was my huge force to to get myself on stage, because he passed away and I was like, whoa, people die. And then it was like, wow, if I died tomorrow, there would be all these things that I never did. And it wouldn't matter why I didn't do them. It would just matter that I never did them. And I was like, I'm going to go on stage. And then right after that, I had an opportunity to do an open mic in like a situation that I felt very safe in. I was like, I'm going to do it. And I've been on stage at least once a week ever since that day. And it was literally because my father passed away. And my dad was like such a cool guy. He was such a funny guy. He was always like the funniest guy in the room. And I think he would have I know he would have loved it. And then my mother's totally into it too, but she doesn't want to like know anything about it. Like she's totally, she loves the idea of it and that I have something to do with my time, you know, which I have so much of, that she's just really happy for me. But even when she starts to hear about something I have made a joke about, she gets offended. She just instantly is like, oh, I don't want to hear that word. You know, like if I say, she's one of those people who like, if I say I got drunk, she goes, I don't like dirty words. And I'm like,
what do you want me to say?
She does not want to know about my, like, you know, my fisting jokes or my, you know, she does not need to go there.
Oh my God. I did, one of the podcasts I did this morning was I had a bunch of my regular comedian, like podcast guests, who do these group hangs with me, and I played them my first open mic recording, just for the sake of like, just rip me to shreds, because I've been talking to them about comedy for years, and they're just like, they actually do it, and so it was like, you know what, you guys put yourselves out there, I'll just put myself out there too, so it's not like whatever. And listening to it, because we did it was we played the whole thing. It was 5 minutes. It was a sidebar like a couple weeks ago, and we played the thing, and then they just ripped me apart. And then we talked about, you know, time, like open mic performances and just their experiences and all that. But here's the thing. I'm now, like, I want to put it up. I'm going to put it up. But I almost want to take out the thing of me doing it, not because I sucked so bad, but because there are moments where I'm just like, I don't want my parents to hear that. I'm never going to tell that joke again. And my parents are the, you know, a core part of my listener base. But it's like, I told a couple jokes that I never want anyone to hear because I'll never tell them again because I feel horrible about saying them. And so now I'm just like, God damn it. But they're all like weirdly supportive. Because my kid's about to turn 1. This is a hell of a time for me to up and decide to start going to open mics. So like, but my dad's a professional musician. Like that's what he does. And so when I started doing music, it was always this interesting dynamic because it was just like he's a famous jazz musician. Like he's really, really fucking good. Like absurdly good. So nothing that anything in every genre I play is just like some dumb version of punk rock that like it's always just like, oh, that's. He was always very nice and supportive, but it really, I would bet somewhere deep down, or maybe not even deep down, it was like, so this is what you're choosing to do? This is, but like telling them, I was like, oh yeah, I just did a couple open mics, it's fun. Like seeing them just like, seeing an art form that they don't actually like do or aren't a part of, it was actually kind of cool because I was like, oh, are they impressed by this? Like, is that what this feels like? Is that okay? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we everyone in my family. I have 3 brothers, and like we all have like found some way to work our way into like making our creative endeavors and our personal life, you know, our actual jobs, like work in unison. Like my one younger brother, he's a drummer in a band, in a speed metal band. And, you know, my other brother, he's like he doesn't anymore, but he worked for General Motors. He was one of those guys that would like go to like these giant meetings of like 1,000 people, and he would like get up there and like do the rah. So it's like all of us ended up like on stage in some way and doing very different things, and then all day doing something completely different than that. But that was very much my dad, because my dad was also a musician, and he was just like a real charismatic guy, and you know, he was like a real smart guy and everything, and you know, he was just like a magnetic personality, and it was like he didn't even have to do anything amazing, and you were just kind of like impressed by him because you're like, oh, you have a great job, you know all these things, you're talented, you're a musician, you're just great. You don't have to be a millionaire or do whatever. You're just a good guy, cool guy, and you know, I think we all tried to find some part of that in our adult lives too.
Yeah. Did you find that about yourself, that you were always kind of magnetic in that way? I personally am not, and I've always strived to be, I think, because of that lacking. But do you find that about yourself?
Well, it's weird because, like I said, like, you know, I remember like as a kid being like, I always wanted to be the one to participate in class, and I always wanted to be the one to get up in front of the class, and I always wanted to be the one to like read my story and like, you know, read aloud. And then literally as kids got into like middle school, and I noticed that everybody would make fun of my voice, that I totally like shut up. I totally was like, oh no, never mind. I'm just gonna be as quiet as I possibly can and just skate through. But I always like still had it in my head. Like when kids would make fun of me, I always knew that like my comebacks were funnier and they were like better jokes. But like no one ever like laughed along with me because like they were all making fun of me. You know, they were
exactly.
You know,
you didn't have any
kids.
You didn't have any neutral parties to show that you're
Right.
I like the
but
insight
like
that you're showing. Like, I know
but it's funny because like, but in my family, like I'm from a big family. I have 3 brothers.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you are socialized. Like, you know, it doesn't. I didn't really care what all these kids thought because I had like 3 other individuals and my parents who we had plenty of good social life, and I I learned I was magnetic with them. They all found me charming and wonderful, and still do.
Yeah, my mom likes me too.
Yeah, my mom likes me a whole lot. She says I'm great. So book me, just book me. My mom says I'm great.
Yeah, that's gonna be on your book. That's gonna be your he's great, mom, Michael's mom. That's what it is.
My movie poster.
Yeah, exactly. Your one sheet. I can just see it now. Yeah. So do you? That's really okay. That's really cool. You got thinking about from doing these open mics is that obviously I won't spoil any of it. 1, because my memory is terrible, and 2, because I wouldn't do that. Your bit on evolution that I keep noticing with these, for lack of a better term, open micers. I know you do plenty of shows outside of open mics, but just for whatever you want to call it, the better comics tend to be either great at just the couple line jokes, or the more elaborate concepts. And you're one of the few that I've noticed. Not just around here, but like I said, I've talked to a lot of comics. I've watched a lot of whatever lesser known up and coming comics, whatever you want to call it, and it's very rare to see someone combine the two. And you definitely do that. Did that kind of happen right away, where you were able to have that, getting your laughs every handful of seconds while explaining a greater concept, or did you find that happened over time and you kind of had to work on separate skills and combine them?
I think,
or option 3.
Yeah, or option D. So I think like I always had like such an off the cuff kind of take on comedy. Like I could write a million jokes, but then also something could happen to me this morning, and I'm like, yeah, this is the right bit. This is what I want to talk about tonight at the show. I'm just gonna get up there and be like, the craziest thing just happened to me. But I also learned that like a lot of times a comedic audience expects jokes, and they want, there cannot be too much build up and time in between jokes, and there needs to be, you got to lead with the joke, and like there's just certain rules that are you're either going to entertain a comedy audience or you're not. And so I really realized that like, okay, anything I want to talk about, any story I want to tell, any kind of subject that I want to explain, concept that I want to explain, I'm going to have to punch it up. And I know that if I stick to common themes and themes that I have written a lot of material about, that I can always kind of work it back into a place where I can put in a joke that I already know is a good joke, even if the overall concept that I'm talking about is something I've never talked about before. So it's like things like evolution and religion age and my family and being gay and being a nerd. It's like all this like stuff. Like I know like if I'm talking about anything that can anyway cross over with that, there's going to be room for jokes that I've already written and that I know are good jokes. So yeah, so it's got to be like part writing and it's got to be part like story and concept, because I don't want to just get up there and tell jokes. That's why I hate anytime you go somewhere and it's like a 3-minute set. I'm like, I can't even get started in 3 minutes. Like, you got to be kidding me. But it's I hate it.
I was actually, that's one of the next question I was going to ask is like, at what number of minutes do you, that you know you're going to get to perform, do you start to feel very comfortable about kind of opening up with those longer form things? Is it 7 minutes, 10 minutes? How long do you need before you're really comfortable to just play around in that?
Well, I know because I'm not afraid to talk so fast that I don't give people a chance to laugh, which has been one of my biggest notes, is like, maybe stop talking. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I have a lot to say. You can laugh later.
You can laugh on the right.
Like, you can laugh later when you think about it and realize how funny it is. So like, I know I can cram a good story into 5 minutes where I feel like I'll get out a lot of content. But I think I've just been so trained to do like a 7-minute set that 7 minutes is a very comfortable place for me, where I know I can get through a good story or explain something kind of silly, or even work my way up to a silly concept like that story, the story of how the devil created evolution. Like that's a good 2 or 3 minutes. That's a good 2 or 3 minute joke.
Yeah.
And if you tell it right and you really let it breathe, but at the same time, it's not a joke that can really stand on its own. It's not really just like, some people think the devil created evolution. What the hell? Like it needs to be at the end of a bigger conversation that either is about religion or whatever, or it's not. But it has to kind of be a final kind of like punctuation on something I've already been talking about. Like I'm doing 8 minutes next week at the New Deal, but it's PG-13. I'm like, it's what? Like 13-year-old kids like anal sex, right? It's modern society. They love butt sex. So that's going to be interesting to do 8 minutes of clean material. But I know, I think like 7 minutes is like, I feel safe in 7 minutes, and I know I don't have to pull any punches.
Yeah, that's the biggest. I had two like. I can't wait till I've gone up a bunch more times so I can feel much more like confident about sharing stories, because I know so little right now that I'm just like trying to grasp at straws of similarities. But two things that after the first 3 times I went up, and I've only gone up 4 times, but like after this past Monday where I just completely bombed at Sidebar, it was the first time most of my comedian friends from around here saw me, and I was like, it was hands down the worst I'd ever done. And I was like, ah, shit. And I would ask for advice, and one of the biggest things I realized, and you just said it was leaving room for them to laugh. I was leaving a fraction of a second after I told a punchline, and I was like, oh, nope, it bombed. Go right to the next one. And it was like, there's no chance. And so then just like from the next night, I was like, I have to go up again. I have to just get that taste out of my mouth. And I did 2 things. 1, I let things breathe. 3 things. 1, let things breathe. 2, Mike Brand told me, he's like, lean into the jokes. Like, lean into your punchlines. If you bomb and you get hit hard, it happens. But you have to lean into it. You can't do it with an ironic distance. Like, it just doesn't work. And then the third thing that I realized was, I'm trying to tell long-form stories where I'm trying to turn these observations I made into a longer bit when they really are, like, I just have to admit, I have to crawl before I can walk. They are set up punchlines. Like, and so I took a bunch of these 1-minute bits that I had, condensed them to 20 seconds, and then added some stuff, went up the next night, and it went a million times better. And so it's just like those things that you're absolutely right about. Like, it's exactly. And it's so hard to like let things breathe, to have it as a conversation, that you have to be really good to do that. And that's why, like, just how impressive that particular bit is. Like, but yeah.
It's a lot. It's all the pauses, and it's funny. Archie Jameson was really nice to me the other night. I forget, it was a show we were both in or something. And he was like, you're a good comedian. He's like, because I know when you pause, I know whatever you say after the pause is going to be good. Like, I know like, you're pausing for effect, if it's not the end of a joke. And he's like, and it shows that you're a good joke writer. And I was like, and that made me feel really good because that has not always been the case because from nervousness, I would just talk over people because I didn't want to give them the chance not to laugh. And,
yes.
You know, I was like, well, whatever, here's the next joke that'll be so funny that also I'll just keep talking. And because I was, you know, and because I spent so much time literally at a piano bar, standing next to people on the bar stools and just telling them about a movie I watched, that like I kind of had to get comfortable with the idea of like, oh, even though these are jokes that I'm telling them, I have to treat it like it's a conversation. And that moment after the joke where you let people breathe is where you let the person you're talking to react to what you just said. And you can't just monopolize the conversation and then say, good night, thanks for the drink, and walk out the door. You know, you have to, it has to be a conversation, you know, with the audience. You know,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Hopefully
in my normal conversations, I don't usually let people respond, especially when I've been drinking. So that's definitely okay. Yeah, that is actually. By the way, that conceptualization you just had for that is a perfect example. Is that you know that would be the pauses are where they would be responding. Like that's really really smart. All right, well, thank you so much for coming on. Could you give me any plugs that you have? This will come out in the next week and a half. And then possibly the beginning of next week. But yeah, any plugs you got for me?
Well, check out Michael Furr or Michael C. Furr on all forms of social media, Twitter and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. Although Instagram it has absolutely nothing to do with comedy. It has lots to do with my outfits though. But like, yeah, and you can check out my website via my Facebook page. I host a monthly show called The Rainbow Show at the Charm City Comedy Project. It's coming up the 24th, and there'll be another one the second Thursday in April. I'm going to be at the Mercury Theater next month with Banana Phone, my long-form improv troupe. I'm also in a short-form troupe called Waiting for Steinberg. Watch Hamden Tonight on YouTube and Periscope. Season 2 will be starting in June. And yeah, and just enjoy comedy.
Nice. All right, excellent. And you, the viewer or listener, whatever, this will be in audio. You can find more podcasts like this at erictriestoohard.com. Find me at Eric Tries on Twitter and on YouTube at Eric Tries Too Hard. Well, thank you and subscribe on iTunes. I keep forgetting to say that. And I feel like this podcast would do a little better if I kept remembering. But yeah, thanks again for coming on. You're such a funny dude, and everybody should check Michael Furr out, Furr, F-U-R-R, and follow him everywhere. Well, I'm sure I'll see you around, and it was great to talk to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
All right, have a good night.
You too.